Hi, curious minds and headline hunters. Welcome again to another episode of Talk, Listen, and Discuss. Today, I wanted to follow up on my video of the Amy Bradley case. I came across a video today on YouTube which had Amy Bradley's brother being interviewed by a local TV station. The local TV station is WTVR, WTVR CBS Channel 6. And the brother is named Brad Bradley, and he was discussing his sister Amy's 1988 cruise ship disappearance on WTVR's Untold podcast. While he did mention some things that were not put in the Netflix documentary, and I understand that. They only have so much that they can put of content in a docuseries, a documentary, any kind of show. But what he told me really did not change my mind that I still believe it is more likely she fell overboard. The constant pushback that people like myself who believe she fell overboard get is that those railings are so high and it's unlikely that somebody would just fall overboard. I will say this, I don't believe she threw herself over. I do not believe that at all. But it still goes back to some things that just following human behavior, it seems more likely that she would have accidentally fallen overboard than any of the other scenarios. And today I wanted to present my argument still on why I believe the way I believe. So today here I would like to discuss the room, her clothing. I wanted to talk about her relationship with Yellow. I also want to talk about eyewitness testimony. I want to bring up the concept of trafficking, as well as discuss the photo. That seems to be the one major thing that people can't wrap their head around and makes them believe that she is still out there. Okay, so first let's start with the room. You're going to see some photos of the room, either the room themselves or a similar room that the family would have had on that exact cruise ship. So these are pictures of the room or a room that is like the room that the Bradleys had. And you will see that the patio was small, that there were two chairs on there, just as described in Netflix, and there was a table also as described by Netflix. The FBI was adamant that there was a table pushed up against the railing. Now, in the video I saw today, the interview between Brad Bradley and the reporter, he mentions that that just wasn't the case. But when you look at the pictures, it's easy to see that that could have very well been the case. Now, I'm not saying we should believe the FBI over people all the time, but in this case, the way that the investigation would have had to happen, there have to be diagrams and photos. So for the FBI to consistently be saying that there was a table pushed against the railing, I'm going to have to give them the benefit of the doubt because they were going in there not as emotionally attached to an outcome as the family is. Now, why does it matter that there was a table pushed up against the railing? Well, it goes back to my argument. A lot of people mention that it is very hard for somebody to just fall over a railing. And I agree with that. I 100% believe that, but it is not impossible. And why I always go back to Amy Bradley being sick, quite possibly getting on the table to throw up over the railing is because the railing is about chest high. And for somebody who was feeling sick, who did not want to disturb her family, who seemed to be very considerate, it may have been a foggy reasoning to either kneel on the table, not necessarily stand, but maybe somehow use the table as a prop to get more over the railing to throw up. And that may have put herself in a situation to where with that kind of violent throw up, because it seemed like she was really hungover, that that could have been the case. The reason I say this is that her brother in the video, and that I'm going to link in my description, mentions she was very sick. She got seasick very easily. And because she got seasick very easily, she decided to stay out on the patio because she was feeling sick. Now, why would somebody stay out on the patio if they were feeling sick and not go into the room? There's two reasons that I believe, just based on my own experiences of being hungover in the past and my own experiences of seeing other people have been hungover in the past. When you get that sick, the breeze or cool air does help. Another thing that helps is throwing up. It is almost impossible when you're feeling that churning, when you're feeling that sick, and that heat wave comes over you, not to want to give your body some kind of relief. This is what I see having played out. Because her shoes were left behind, and there's no indication, even in the video that I'm linking in my description, that she had another pair of shoes she could have worn. This is what it seems like happened. Amy Bradley took off her shoes. She stayed outside because she wasn't feeling good. Even her brother mentions that in the video. He chose to go inside and sleep. She chose to stay outside and get some sleep. And at some point, she woke up. She had the wherewithal to get her cigarettes and the lighter, which would make sense. She probably wanted a cigarette and the lighter to take out with her to the patio. Another thing, she had her shirt, the yellow polo shirt that she was wearing over the undershirt was laid over the chair in the room, whereas before it was on her person. So at some point during the time where her brother went to sleep, Amy got up, went back into the room, put the shirt over the chair, and went back out somewhere, whether to the patio or outside the room. But it doesn't make sense for her to have the wherewithal to take the shirt off and leave the room without a shirt and shoes, but not to at least carry her shoes outside the room. And why take off the shirt? Maybe she got it dirty. We don't know. They don't really mention that. Maybe she accidentally got it dirty. Maybe it stunk. I don't know why she took off the shirt, but this is what I can propose happen. I believe her cigarettes and her lighter were in the room. She went back out to get them, and while she was in there, she took off her shirt to go back onto the patio to get more of the breeze. Since she was prone to being seasick, I do believe that that motion made her sicker. And when she went back out to the patio, I believe she got sick, violently throw up sick. And because her cigarettes and her lighter would have been with her in her pocket, when she went over, that all went overboard with her. It just, to me, unless she was known to walk around the cruise ship without a shirt and just an undershirt and without her shoes, it doesn't seem to make sense that she would leave the room without her shoes, at least in hand, if she didn't want to make any noise, and why she would go without either taking another shirt, or at least why was it that she felt like she needed to take off the polo shirt? To me, the shirt doesn't matter as much as her not taking her shoes with her, especially if she wasn't going to have another garment over her. There's just something about that. Maybe the family could tell me, yes, she was going around the cruise ship without shoes, but because this was her first time on the cruise ship, I don't think that she would have been that comfortable just walking around the whole cruise ship without shoes. I could be wrong, but that's why I tend to believe that she got violently sick, put herself on the table so she wouldn't accidentally get throw up on the pane, because I do believe she was a considerate person, but she was so sick she wasn't understanding that that could be something that would put her in harm's way. At this time, they were in transport between Aruba and Curacao. So there is that likelihood, especially with whatever speed the ship was going, that if she had fallen over, even within 30 minutes, that her dad says he may have last seen her, waking up in a fog. He believes he saw her around 5:30, and he ended up waking up at 6 and didn't see her out there anymore. And he believed that she went to go get coffee. She left the room to go get coffee or something. And he thought he would bump into her. Well, let's just say that he is accurate in his memory. and that it was 30 minutes. Well, 30 minutes on a cruise ship is a long time for a body to be out at sea with the distance of separation. So that is one thing I'd like to propose, and I still proposed in my last video on Amy Bradley. And thank you, by the way, for all that who tuned into that and watched it. I appreciate it. And I hypothesized this in that video, and I'm still, even after the video I saw today with the brother, I still stand that that's as likely as the other scenarios that were presented in the Netflix documentary and his discussion with the reporter. The second thing, well, actually, that was the first and second thing, the shoes. The room and the shoes, to me, they go hand in hand. The shoes being left there, her walking barefoot, it just, that, I know she was sick and hungover, but again, if she had the wherewithal to take her shirt off and put it on the chair, I don't know why she wouldn't have picked up her shoes to take them with her if she knew she was going to leave the room, because she also remembered to get her cigarettes and her lighter. It's just that kind of thought process. Okay, so number 3, she mentioned to her brother when they were out on the patio before her brother went to sleep. Remember that after they had been partying all night, he decided he needed to go back to the room. He was tired. They needed to get some sleep because they were going to be docking early in the morning. So he told Amy he was going to the room, and she shortly follows him later. She enters the room about 5 minutes after him. While they're talking on the patio, he mentions that she told him that Yellow had been hitting on her. And that, I believe he said in this video with the reporter, maybe he mentioned it in the Netflix documentary, this specifically, that he touched her on the chest. I don't remember that from the Netflix documentary, but with this discussion with the reporter, he mentions that, and that she just laughed it off. Now, it's very evident that if somebody's going to touch you that way, why would you be in touch with them the first thing the next morning? That doesn't make sense to me. She could laugh it off because, yeah, can you believe he did that? But it doesn't make sense to me that the next morning that would be the first person she would want to go hang out with, somebody who had tried to make advances at her. Now, even if she just happened to accidentally run into him and give him a second chance, maybe. But from all accounts, she was a very sharp girl who could take care of herself. And that just does not seem like a likely scenario why she would put herself in that position to be that close in proximity to him. That is just what I'm thinking. What are your thoughts on that? Another thing is that, and by the way, she was gay. I think that the family is very forthcoming in letting us know, especially in the video with the reporter, Brad mentions she came out to us in 1992, I believe he said. Well, she came out to them years before they were on the cruise ship. So her family knew that she was gay, as well as I'm sure the people on the cruise ship would have known she was gay. Maybe they didn't. I don't know. But again, Yellow wasn't going to be her cup of tea. Again, why would she want to why would she want to put herself in that type of situation with him first thing in the morning when she had been feeling sick, according to her brother? That just doesn't make sense to me. Okay, the fourth thing is the eyewitness testimony. So we've talked about the room, we've talked about the shoes and Yellow hitting on her, and now I wanted to bring it back to the eyewitness testimony. When it comes to the eyewitness testimony, like most of us, we have watched so many true crime documentaries, shows. We've also listened to podcasts. We understand that eyewitness testimony, especially years later, tends to be not very reliable at all. In fact, during my research, I came across a study in Frontiers in Psychiatry, and I'm going to read you what they present in their abstract. And this is coming from a study on August 13, 2014. Eyewitness error is one of the leading causes of wrongful conviction. In fact, the American Psychological Association estimates that 1 in 3 eyewitnesses make an erroneous identification. When we go to the conclusion of this study, the principal participants in criminal justice systems appear to have limited knowledge of eyewitness factors. This result is not surprising, as previously stated. Research shows that the principal participants in criminal justice systems have trouble applying their knowledge of eyewitness factors to the facts of a case. Consequently, even if they were knowledgeable about eyewitness factors, they would probably still have problems assessing eyewitness accuracy. So basically, what this is saying is that eyewitness testimony is not reliable. And because it's not reliable, it can only be added to other factors, for example, to support facts that have been conclusively identified, to support an argument rather than beat the argument. So we saw that in the Netflix documentary. They had a lot of eyewitness accounts. Some were deemed to be credible enough to be followed up on, but none of these accounts in and of themselves were substantial enough to be able to, or for any crime, for the FBI or for any crime syndicate to be, for the FBI to be able to 100 positively say that Amy Bradley indeed was alive and that she had been seen by these witnesses. They were what you would call a lead, and because they were a lead, those leads had to be followed. But that didn't mean that the eyewitness testimony in and of itself was reliable to say that she was alive. So that is why the eyewitness testimony isn't compelling enough for me to change my mind. Okay, so one of the main things is that Yellow could have been a part of a trafficking system. That brings us to number 5, the trafficking component. When I was doing my research on trafficking, I'd already known enough about trafficking to understand that Amy really usually, okay, let me say that. I know anybody can be trafficked, but she didn't fit the typical victim when it comes to trafficking. She was with a very supportive family. She was economically, it seemed, well-to-do, or at least she wasn't poor. She also seemed to be in a situation where it wasn't the ideal situation to be trafficked. And let me explain what I mean by that. When I look at the human trafficking in the transportation system, and this is from transportation.gov, I was looking at the maritime information they had on human trafficking. And let me read you quickly what I found out here. It says, the transportation sector serves as a critical connector that can both facilitate and prevent human trafficking. Maritime entities can play a key role in helping to intercept and prevent human trafficking by ensuring that their employees and travelers are equipped with the knowledge to recognize and report suspected instances of human trafficking. So to break this up in a little bit, this is part of an initiative on training programs that have been mandated to several sectors, especially in the transportation industry, on how their employees are to be trained to identify as well as prevent human trafficking. And they also want the customers. A 2018 Polaris study of 104 survivors found that during their experience, 3% were transported by cruise ship. How are victims lured and recruited? This is again from transportation.gov. Acting alone or as part of an organized criminal enterprise, human traffickers recruit individuals in person and online with false promises of a better life, employment, educational opportunities, and conflict-free environments, temporary housing, access to basic necessities, or even a seemingly loving family, relationship, marriage, or home. An analysis of trends of calls received in 2021 by the National Human Trafficking Hotline found that the top traffickers were employers, 43%, family members, 26%, and intimate partners, 22%, and that most individuals subjected to human trafficking, 65%, were recruited online. Of course, during Amy Bradley's time, online would not have been the major way of recruitment. However, human trafficking is a crime often occurring in plain sight, as fear of traffickers often keep individuals subjected to human trafficking from seeking help. We do have some stories on eyewitnesses saying that they did see who they believed was Amy Bradley being tightly guarded by 2 men at all times. So that would fit this. But when you read further, Traffickers coerce or force individuals into human trafficking through emotional, psychological, economic, and physical abuse. The National Human Trafficking Hotline's analysis of trends of calls received in 2021 found that the emotional abuse, 28%, economic abuse, 26%, and threats, 23%, remain the most frequently required methods. Among a range of 435 to 450 respondents, 96% had experienced physical, sexual, or emotional abuse. 91% experienced mental health challenges. 83% experienced poverty. 69% ran away from home. And 62% experienced substantial substance abuse. Overall, she did not fit the profile. She was in a strong, supportive, loving family. She had a lot of economic advantages, and she seemed very happy, healthy, and put together. So this does not seem like she would have been the ideal candidate. According to the International Labor Organization, 27.6 million, or 3.5 out of every 1,000, were victims of human trafficking in 2021, including 77% through forced labor and 23% through commercial sexual exploitation. Their average trafficking situation is 15.4 months. So the average trafficking situation is 15.4 months. So you may be wondering how does trafficking begin? So people in sex trafficking situations almost always know and even trust and love their traffickers. Traffickers target vulnerable people who have needs that the traffickers can fill. Sometimes they offer material support, a place to live, clothing, a chance to get rich quick. Other times they offer love, emotional support, or a sense of belonging. Kidnapping victims and forcing them into the sex trade through violence is rare. And that's the points I wanted to make. So based on the information we have there from very reputable organizations, so just with those two facts alone, that kidnapping is rare, or at least a rare entry into sex trafficking, and that 3% of cruise ship victims are and out of sex trafficked victims, 3% are located within the transportation maritime chain of cruise ships. But even if they are part of that 3%, most of them are being transported through cruise ships and not kidnapped from, or identified or kidnapped or recruited on cruise ships. So that is why I believe that it's not very likely that trafficking would be what happened to Amy Bradley. And then the last is the photo, which seems to get a lot of people believing that she's still out there, that she's still alive, or at least she was alive at one point, and therefore she was kidnapped off the cruise ship, put into some kind of sex slave trade. But the reason I believe that photo in and of itself also is not proof is because when I was doing more research, the FBI is still not willing to say that they are 100% sure that that is Amy in that photo. And with recent analysis of the photo, when they're able to highly optimize the resolution on this grainy photo, it appears to look less like Amy Bradley. And therefore, people who were strong advocates that the photo could be Amy are now reconsidering what they believe about that photo and what it could mean to Amy Bradley's disappearance. So the things that seem to be supporting that Amy Bradley was kidnapped and put into a sex slave trade, sex trafficked, seem to be just as weak, if not weaker, than even the scenario of what we know, that she was hungover. Her brother said she was feeling very sick, that she would get very seasick easily. And from all accounts, she was a very considerate, loving, strong, happy person. And this would, in my mind, make me believe that she didn't throw herself over, but that she didn't want to be disruptive to her family while they were sleeping. She wanted to get some kind of relief and therefore put herself in a very precarious situation unknowingly. And that is why no one reliably saw her. And that is why that she has not been discovered, because it is very unlikely that bodies get discovered when they have been lost at sea. They were in transit to Curacao and from Aruba to Curacao. They still had some distance to cover, and in that distance, that would have given plenty of opportunity for her to have been lost at sea. But that is why, even after watching the video today, I am still convinced that the scenario of her accidentally falling overboard is more likely than all the complications it would have taken to kidnap her off a cruise ship and then keep her in a sex slave trade for this long, or even for the time that multiple eyewitnesses claim they saw her. Thank you for putting up with me and my very allergy-ridden voice, but I felt that this was important. So I would like for these eyewitness testimonies to be better scrutinized, especially with the new technology that they have out there in forms of procedures. And I also would like to see what the possibility of somebody being that sick, using that table for leverage, how that kind of simulation would work for somebody going overboard. I'm willing to admit that I am wrong. And one thing I didn't add is, and I'll say number 7, I just don't believe that Yellow was smart enough to pull this off. And not only smart enough to pull this off, or conniving enough to pull this off, I just don't believe that he would be on a cruise ship for 3 years and the activity around him on that cruise ship or off that cruise ship would not be indicative or indicting enough of the kind of nefarious activities he could be a part of. I don't know, but I do know this, that all those scenarios have so many moving parts to them that sometimes a simple theory is the best theory. And while it's unlikely, people do accidentally fall over cruise ships. And I believe that that's what we're looking at here. So thank you for tuning into this follow-up of Amy Bradley. If something ever new comes up, I will definitely do another follow-up. But for now, I really do believe that this is best left in the hands of the simplest theory. But if you would take the time to put the spotlight on the video that I did on Tamara Holknecht from Wichita Falls, Texas, who did have a suspicious death in 2007. The family do not believe it was an accidental drowning, as the Wichita Falls Police Department and the Medical Examiner and Coroner's Office did. And I wanted to get your thoughts on that. I did request for some of those investigative reports, autopsy reports, and toxicology reports to review those. And I just would like to get your initial thoughts on that. I introduced in the first video some background, but the next video I'm going to really be doing what I did today, is talking about things in the case that just don't make sense and picking them out. Some have been talked about, others not, and some that were talked about, I don't think they did a deep enough dive, and I want to present what I found out, as well as I want to present the heart of the mother. That mother is beautiful, and she is fighting for her daughter so many years later. And I think it's admirable, and I think she deserves to be heard, and I think she deserves to have this case presented in the way that she's always wanted. And that is with a big heart, with a lot of passion, and a commitment to getting answers. So thank you for joining today's video. I hope to see you soon. God bless you. Take care of one another. Take care of yourself. And until next time, bye.